Hello everyone, and thank you for following The Nerd today. I am Todd Black, news writer and TV reviewer, and a good friend of you all, I'm sure. I am joined today by a good friend of mine, Blane Humphries from 2-dash.com. Say hi to the folks at Following the Nerd, Blane.
Hey, and try saying that name 5 times fast.
Following the Nerd or 2-dash?
That one.
Last one?
2-dash. The second.
2-dash.
You don't count though.
Hey, don't issue a challenge if you don't want it there. Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, at the time of this recording, San Diego Comic-Con is in full effect, and you're going to be hearing news, previews, reveals, announcements of all things comic culture. And one of the big reveals that they did at San Diego Comic-Con day one was the full reveal of the Flash pilot. Yes, we know it's been leaked on the internet. We don't care. It's officially unveiled now.
Because nobody has watched it.
No. We have the internet have integrity. We wouldn't dare look at leaked material. What is wrong with you? How dare you insinuate that we are cowards and who love leaked information and pilots and stuff like that? For shame. For shame. Moving on. But yes, we have both seen the pilot, and we are both very excited about it. I'm excited. I'm excited. You're excited, right, Blane?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And we've both seen Arrow. You know, I review Arrow on FTN, and I know, Blane, you finally caught up with everything.
I did. I sat down for like 2 weeks and did nothing but watch Arrow.
Yeah. So there's a lot to process, because obviously Arrow started this whole Flash thing, and now we got the pilot, which wasn't even intentional. There was supposed to be a backdoor pilot. Episode 20 of Arrow Season 2 was supposed to be the backdoor pilot for Flash. They said, no, we have enough material here, we could do a full pilot. And they did, and we have seen it, and it is good. So, where do you think we should start with this, Blane?
The beginning.
Okay, in the beginning. Okay, let's start with the literal beginning in that Barry Allen.
Yeah, okay. Actually, this is something I wanted to talk about, because while I was watching it, Todd, you know this about me, I have a real issue with continuity, and so maybe I was just overlooking some things, maybe I just didn't remember some things, but I feel like his coming to getting struck by lightning and everything played out a bit differently in the pilot than it did.
It did to a small degree. And no, this is a good point, because I caught it too. Because, for those who don't know, if you don't know, what the heck are you doing here? Oh, before we start, warning! There are going to be major spoilers for this Flash pilot. Hell already. They tell us to do these days. Todd, you have to put warning at the beginning of all spoilerific episodes of content and everything. So this is.
Well, I think the title is talks about Flash pilot. That come on.
You never know. They're gonna be like, oh, maybe this going to say something about the pilot. No, we're supposed to spoil everything from beginning to end. So you have been warned. All right. So when Flash was introduced, or Barry Allen was introduced in The Scientist in Three Ghosts in Arrow Season 2, they showed him entering his loft on the phone with Felicity, and then shortly afterwards, that he got struck by lightning. They didn't even mention Felicity at all, even though she was in love with him. In this episode. Okay, yeah, and in the pilot, they alter it slightly to make it look like he's been in... That's the funny thing, is that he actually said in the Arrow episodes that I missed the turning on of the collider, and yet in the pilot we see him with Iris, who we'll get to in a second, at the thing where they're about to turn it on. And so it's a little continuity break, but overall it's a minor issue. And remember, when they made the end of Three Ghosts, they weren't planning on making the full pilot. They were going to do the backdoor pilot on episode 20. So, in what they did, they kept it as close as they can without shattering it. But
I guess it always bugs me.
Well, it's just true. Hey, I hate retconning as much as you do. I notice things. That's how we're trained, especially as geeks and nerds. So I understand it. But you are right. There is a small difference in take between how it's seen in Arrow and how it's seen in Flash. But given how it is, and basically how they both end the same way, and they're both done how he gets struck by lightning the same way, I'm gonna let it go. So, yeah. But
Yeah.
let's start with Barry. Let's start with Barry Allen, a totally different character than Oliver Queen. We could say that right up front.
No, I'll disagree with this.
Really?
To a point. Because, I mean, yeah, he's supposed to be a different character, but while he's narrating, he was like, I am Barry Allen. I am the protector of this city.
No, don't say it right. Say, I am the fastest man alive.
Yeah, still, but if you take his exact tones and replace it with, my name is Barry Allen, and I am here to protect this city. It was literally the exact same tone as I am Oliver Queen.
Okay, fine. Let's play it this way. Outside of monologuing and which, if you think about it, that's just how this DC.
Yeah, I know it's continuity for DC, which I love it. That didn't bother me, but still.
I'm gonna say it right now. As you of all people know that my desire is to see a Shazam TV show, and I am actually working on something right now to have my own monologue for a Shazam TV show, and I made sure I did the monologue because I wanted to be in the Arrow and Flash universe. So I will totally keep that because I like it. Now, do I want a full 30-second monologue at the beginning of every Flash episode? No. He had 15 seconds at the beginning and end. That was fine. So.
And he got it at the end too, but
exactly, yeah. So
I think it was just enough, just to bring the universes together.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were some noticeable similarities, but enough differences. I think it was okay.
I think that was important too because just on a superficial level, Arrow and Flash are two totally different characters. Because Arrow is, of course, What?
I said, yeah.
Well, that's important because it's not like there are some characters that there are similarities, but with this one, it's not just it's another hero. It's a hero with superpowers, something that Arrow strived very hard not to have. Even with the Mirakuru serum, it was scientific super strength, not necessarily Superman or Shazam or everything where they are.
He wasn't given powers by God or aliens.
Exactly. It was scientific strength, and the Flash is anything but scientific. He's like, how impossible are you, Mr. Allen? But that's important. And then of course the characters themselves of Barry versus Oliver. Oliver is very sure of himself. He's confident because of the 5 years of the island, whereas Barry is very nervous. He's kind of withdrawn, but he's also very scientific.
Actually, while we're talking about his character, this was another thing that was confusing to me.
Okay.
Is he's a cop.
He's a forensic assistant to the Central City Police Department.
Yes, but they only showed the police department once, I think. Is he a cop that works from home? Twice. Okay.
Okay, he works for the department, but his lab is in his home, which is where he was struck by.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I saw that.
So.
But I don't know. It was just for him being working with the police department, they didn't actually really show that at all. They just kind of showed him running up to the crime scene late, and then they showed him in his apartment saying, "Hey, I found whatever it is we were looking for." He
did that whole scientific thing with the car tread, where he's he could see the measurements point. That was cool.
Yeah, that was cool, but I wonder, is that it in his character, or you are more read up on Flash than I am?
He is, in the comics, he is a forensic assistant, he's a forensic scientist. In the comics, he's, older, and, he actually has a forensic position. But, no, that is very much in line with his character. So
I mean, being able to see heights and distances.
Well, I think that was just visual for us, so that we could see what he sees. Because obviously he's just studied up on this and everything. But I think that was just a visual cue to make us see something.
Well, because it didn't happen again though. Because I imagined when I saw that the first time, I imagined that while he was running, he would be able to trace out his paths, but they didn't show that.
Well, I think of it it's a visual thing, so we can see what he sees. What is he looking at? What is he seeing here? But also, if you recall the Arrow episode when Oliver was poisoned, and he was reciting all the things that could be poisoning him. He's okay, three options, 2 options.
Yeah,
you could just see the wheels turning in his head. And if that was in a Flash episode, I bet you would see the text all over his all in his head or whatever. Just show us something that what he sees. So that's fine by me.
Yeah,
but
I know it was just one of those, another little thing I noticed. I was just curious why they didn't bring it.
Another thing that'll hopefully be expanded upon, and because that's the other thing is that where Oliver Queen was the millionaire playboy like a certain other hero we all know. Barry, much like Superman, actually has a job. He's Clark Kent's the reporter, and you got Barry Allen, who's a forensic scientist. So that'll hopefully also be played up as, no doubt those two will tie together to where he can, rush off. Oh, look, there's a murderer over there. I'm gonna go hide over here. Boom. Go take him out. So, but yeah.
Which I don't know how she didn't see that, the girl.
Iris?
Yeah. Well, whenever, like, the whole thing with the car, he dodged it, and then he just takes off after the car. She was right there.
Well, she was lying away when he ran, and then she came over, and then when she turned around, he's, gone, and so you can take that for as you would.
But she didn't, wonder how he, I don't know. That was just okay, I figured, she would have seen that.
Yeah.
So...
Alright, so on the whole, the whole episode, what did you think of Grant Gustin as Barry Allen?
I liked it. I liked his character. I think he did it well.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's super true to the original comic. I know his character's been redone a whole bunch, like every other hero. So I don't know which one they're sticking to mostly with it, or if they're just giving their own spin on it completely. Which that would be nice. But I liked it. I think he has good potential there to be a really likable character.
I liked it too. A lot of people were very concerned. That's a good way of putting it. When Grant Gustin was announced as the actor who was going to play Barry Allen, because he was on Glee, as if he didn't need more of a reason. Yeah, he was.
Who was he?
I don't know. I don't watch Glee. That's part of the problem. Okay.
That's why if he was Blane, I'm going to be upset. I don't think that was him though.
But no. But he was on Glee, and he's only, at least at the time of his casting, he was only 23 years old, which is younger than Stephen Amell as Oliver Queen. So take that as you will. And then he's because Barry, much like Barry, has always been more or less portrayed as a 30-year-old on, I think, not to be confused with Wally West, who was in the Justice League cartoon. But
right.
Yeah, it was concerning. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, he played Sebastian Smythe on Glee.
I was just looking that up.
Yeah, I have the Wikipedia page open, folks, so I'm not gonna lie about that. But it was concerning. And then he did the 2 episodes of Arrow, and I personally wasn't convinced. I remember giving those kind of low scores. And then he won me over. He's different than Ollie, which is important. He has his own style, his own personality, his own flair, but he also has that inner hero that he needs to have, because much more than Green Arrow, especially our version of Green Arrow, the Arrow. No, it's serious. It's true, because when I say that, I mean if you go back to the Justice League cartoon, the one the now legendary cartoon, Green Arrow was Errol Flynn. For you kids who don't know what that is, you really need to look him up. He's got the hat, he's got the goatee, the mustache, he's got arrows
that turn into boxing gloves.
Yes, he's got the arrows that turn into boxing gloves and everything, and and he's got the one-liners, say "aw, dirtbag," and launch the arrow. But he's a funny guy, and you love that about him. But this Arrow, he's not that. But Barry Allen and Wally West and almost every single Flash has that comedy element that they need to have, and he is a hero, whereas Batman and Green Arrow, depending on which continuity, is more of a vigilante. And they even say that in the pilot when we meet Green Arrow in Starling City. Which was a very nice twist. But, he has that hero element in him, like when he confronts Caitlin Snow and Cisco Ramon, who we definitely need to be talking about. And they say, we need to stop this. This is on us now. We have to do it. He took responsibility. He accepts what he is, and he's the Flash now. And I thought that was a really, really well done way of doing it, and just his interactions with Iris and Joe West and everyone else. He's got me won over. He was my biggest worry coming into this, was how would I like Barry Allen, and I am happy that he won me over. So.
See, that was not my biggest worry. I had no doubt that I would like, because I liked his appearance in Arrow, so I knew off the bat that I was going to like him as Flash.
Okay.
My biggest concern is when I first saw like one of the early commercials for it.
Okay.
Was when they started showing like the guy who could control weather and like, and one of the things I loved about Arrow was that they were grounded in reality. Yeah. Even with Miraku, even though I had my issues with it,
and
it was
like
a
guy who could hit an arrow, anywhere he aimed it,
Yeah, like I still had my issues like with that because I got more into the realm of superpowers, like craziness, but it was okay.
Yeah.
But then whenever Flash comes in, it's like, well, obviously you can't deny now it's just straight up superpower. And then they're like, and now he's going to be battling other people with superpowers, but I feel like this was done well enough. It's one of the very few things that's like very gritty, but with superpowers. I know Heroes did something similar, but Heroes eventually just got a bit crazy. Whereas this actually has grounded continuity that it should stick with, and I think that will help it.
What do you mean by a grounded continuity?
Like with Heroes, for example, they were just kind of making it up as they went because it was their universe. Right. Whereas with the Flash, they've got DC, and they've got DC watching them, and they've got Warner Brothers. Sure. And so I feel like that will help it.
Yeah, and even within just the story itself, you not exactly more or less, but you have a logical, I'm doing quotation marks right now, ladies and gentlemen, logical reason for why these people have superpowers. As it's explained, the particle accelerator blew up for at present unknown reason.
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of energies that were all considered theoretical flooded the world, one of which was the lightning bolt that struck Barry Allen and eventually gave Clyde Martin, I believe, his powers to be Weather Wizard. And so...
Is that his name? Weather Wizard?
In the comics, yes. He is Weather Wizard. So, don't hate the player.
I feel like a lot of people who listen to your podcast right now are gonna be like, God, this guy is such a noob. And yes, I'm such a noob. Yeah, me.
Don't worry.
Yeah, no. That I think that my noobness, I'll go ahead and throw in a disclaimer here, provides a unique perspective on the general audiences that will be viewing the show.
That's the thing. It's like, again, I was telling you before the podcast, I didn't know much about Arrow outside of a few things I knew from the Justice League cartoon, from Batman Brave and the Bold, and from other shows I'd see him, like The Batman. He did a couple great Green Arrow episodes. But, what else did I know? And now it's the same. I'm better with Flash because he's a main Justice League member, and I've seen his stuff, and he's had a lot of great cartoon episodes that I've seen in various shows. But even I'm not a master. I don't read his comic. Don't hate me, Flash fans. Don't hate me. But I know enough about him. And yes, the Weather Wizard is one of his main villains, actually. And so I'll be honest. I don't want to toss bad things at these actors, but the guy who played Weather Wizard, I can't find him on the wiki page. That's kind of sad. He did not sell me as Weather Wizard, and I was really. It's hard because on one hand, a pilot,
they didn't really show him that much. I mean, it wasn't really about him.
That was one problem. It's like they didn't show him. Like, yes, they showed him before the lightning strike, which was important, and then they showed him after the lightning strike as the Weather Wizard. But oh my gosh. His voice, his mannerisms, is like
I did get a bit more into him whenever, I guess you want to call it, when he went crazy. Because then it was kind of like, oh, I could see why this guy would be a bad guy. I mean, obviously he's a bank robber. I mean, no duh. He's obviously, yeah. I mean, he's very clearly a bad guy. But I mean, like, I could see why he is a very dangerous bad guy. The guy's trying to be God, apparently.
But that was actually part of the problem, is that, for me anyway, is that in the Flash comics, there are 5 guys. They call themselves the Rogues. That's Captain Cold, who is already confirmed to be in the show, Weather Wizard, Mirror Master, the Trickster, and Captain Boomerang. And all of them are just 5 guys, some with superpowers, some with not, and they do not like the Flash. They want to get him, but they have a code of honor. And that's what separates them from just about every other villain out there, is that they have this code of honor that they will follow to the ends of the earth. And Weather Wizard, he is one that either has powers or doesn't have powers. It really depends on what you know, but he's one of the rogues. He's a grounded guy, and yet here he just seemed like a full-on maniac. You know, it's like, I am God, and then, Joe West goes, why the heck would God want to rob a bank? You're like, there you go. And he's like, oh, I have to think big now, as he starts to create the tornado. And that part was cool, that he was creating the tornado, but it's just, it's the few versions of the character I know, he's crazy that he has powers, or he's... Oh, best example, in the Superman animated series cartoon, which I know you have seen.
Yes.
The episode of The Flash, they had the Weather Wizard. He didn't have superpowers. He used science and a device to control the weather through a rod, or a weapon, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yeah. I remember this.
That was Weather
Okay.
Wizard. And so that right there shows, wait a minute, he's not a superhuman, and he wasn't super insane, I am God. He was just, I can control the weather like a god. And, I'm gonna take out everything you like or whatever. And I'm gonna kill you, Flash. That's what I do. So it's conflicting for me, because in a pilot, you want to show off your hero and you want to show him off well, and they did. And Arrow actually did it really well, where the first guy was just a name on the list. The Adam Hunt. And he was nobody. He didn't have DC references or whatever, and he was a throwaway because it showed off Ollie. But with this, you're showing one of the rogues, a defining member of the Flash's gallery, and he just didn't come off well for me. So hopefully he'll get a redo, much like Deadshot kind of did in Arrow or something. But that for me was the worst part. So
yeah.
But if that's the worst part, was the villain who was only technically on screen for like 5 minutes, you did something. So
I see. Yeah, I guess. I think the worst part for me was the so very typical and predictable relationship thing.
Oh, with Iris.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it was who didn't see that coming?
It's like Barry, I know what you're gonna say. Oh, I really hope you do.
I've never seen something that obvious with it, like her being oblivious. Like that was just cringeworthy.
It was, and it.
And then, of course, she goes after the pretty guy, and it was like...
Well, hold on. I'm going to give her a pass on that, because she explains why she goes after the pretty guy, who we are going to talk about at length, because I don't think you know who he is. And,
no. I probably do. It's probably buried somewhere in my brain. I just forgot. Yeah, but, exactly. I mean...
But, no, Iris West, played by, I believe, Candace Patton, is a longtime member of Flash continuity. And any true Flash fan, or even one who's in part or is partially a Flash fan, I'd say that 5 times fast for you, Blane, knows that Iris and Walt or Barry end up together and eventually make super fan favorite character Wally West. So that's a bit of flash forward.
There you go. You and your puns.
Just wait till the end. You're gonna get the best one of all. But yeah, I'm with you. You knew that was gonna happen. The whole we're brother and sister basically. Knowing each other since kids and everything. It's bad. Yes, it is. But there are pure relationships like that in both in real life and in comics life, and I'm sure eventually, maybe season 3 or 4. You gotta drag it out. She'll either get a clue or something. But for now, especially with how it ended, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he didn't try and pursue the relationship with Iris. So Iris actually was a bit of a...
I mean, he was pretty much forbidden to do it by her father.
No, he was forbidden. Okay, in the ending, ladies and gentlemen, Joe West, Iris West's father, and more or less Barry's surrogate father, finds out that he's the Flash in the final battle with the Weather Wizard, and he says, you can't tell Iris, you can't tell him that you have powers. So Which I know he'll honor as best he can, but in the superhero world and television, nothing stays a secret forever. So, but yeah, it's a complicated thing. I hope it'll be handled well. Arrow more or less showed, you can have relationships that they're going to end, but you can have a bunch of twists and turns on the way. So maybe they'll do it. Maybe they won't. I know, to answer a question of yours, Felicity is going to show up on an episode of Flash.
Well, she would have to.
Well, she as far as from my sources, she's going to show up on episode 3 of the series as she finds out, Barry is alive, no doubt hearing from Oliver, who we'll get to in a second. And so she's going to check in on him, and who knows what may happen. So, I was, like I said earlier, I'm sad she didn't show up in the beginning of this one, because I feel like her character would have from Arrow. Like, she would have been there, like, oh, he's awake, I'm there. Well, true, but if you remember, they mentioned in one of the latter episodes of Arrow when actually Cisco and Caitlin come to Star in the Starling City extension of Star Labs, they meet up with Felicity, and she says, oh, I've been with Barry, more or less every time I could, and Ollie actually calls her out on that. So he goes, I need you here. I don't need you in Central City. You're mine. No, he didn't say that.
Even though I wonder how many people wish that were true. But yeah.
Episode 1 of season 3, Ollie and Felicity go on a date. It's confirmed. So.
Really?
Really.
Well, that's something we'll get to later, I'm sure.
Sure. We'll probably do an Arrow season 3 preview, I'm sure. But actually, that's a good starting point. Let's go to our supporting cast of characters. We actually have a very interesting group of people. We have obviously Iris and Joe West, who will no doubt be playing big parts. We have Caitlin Snow and Cisco Ramon, who are the Star Labs crew, along with Tom Cavanaugh, who we were going to save for a little later, and who was Hector Wells, head of Star Labs. And these two are
Harrison Wells.
Huh?
Harrison Wells,
played by Tom Cavanaugh.
Ah, I got you on one.
I knew it started with an H. Okay. H for Harrison. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so they're probably they are the inaugural members of Team Flash, which is good that we are already getting members of the crew, and I'm glad that they're different than Team Arrow of Diggle and Felicity and technically Laurel, if you really want to think about it like that, because
No.
Ollie had.
No.
I see it. Because
I would say that her dad more than Laurel.
Ooh, good point. Or even Sarah, But
yeah.
But yeah, so it's good because Ollie was by the time he got back to Starling City, he was the one man army. He had the tools, he had the money, he had the skills. Where Barry doesn't. He didn't even have the suit that was made for him by Cisco. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they play off. What did you think of Caitlin and Cisco?
Cisco got annoying. I don't know. He annoyed me. I don't know why. He had no reason to annoy me because I get he was there to be kind of funny, but he still annoyed me. Caitlin was just too depressing. It's like,
Good reason.
I mean, yeah, for good reason, but she's still so they had the one guy who's super off the walls hyper, and then you've got the other girl who's just the polar opposite. It's like, no, just put them both in the middle. But I get that's how their characters are. Yes.
Pop quiz, Mr. Humphries. Do you know who their DC counterparts are? That is a no.
Of course I do, Todd. But let's see if you know who they are, please.
Well, since you challenged me, Mr. Humphries, I will gladly facilitate. Caitlin Snow is the New 52. That's the recent comic version.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'm saying that one. I'm saying for viewers because I know not everyone reads comics. So in the reimagining, I guess you could say, of the DC Universe New 52, Caitlin Snow is the name of a supervillain called Killer Frost. And yeah, Snow, Frost, holla! There you go. And she is actually she's a very complicated character depending on which continuity, but she is more or less a villain. She was in the Justice League cartoon. She was in the Secret Society with Grodd and with Luthor. And in the comics, she's actually a nemesis to Firestorm, who was a very interesting character, as we found out he's actually going to be in the show, played by Robbie Amell. And so that's going to be interesting to see if she is going to eventually turn evil, eventually get powers of her own and turn evil, or maybe she'll break the mold and stick with the hero. Cisco Ramon's character I like, because that is Vibe. Yeah, I'm not surprised you didn't. No, Vibe. Vibe is easily one of the most controversial characters in DCU continuity, especially before the New 52, because he was literally created to be I gotta say this right, a Mexican superhero in Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, well, he was part of this, what was called the Justice League Detroit, and he was, a lot of fans saw him as just a stereotype because he was Mexican. He had like the newfangled language. He was meant to be a dancer / rapper superhero, kind of, sort of. So he had like the flashy jumpsuit. He had the goggles. He was doing like dance moves. He was a break dancing Mexican or whatever, and it did not go over well. And so I was
nothing about that sounds good.
Well, for me anyway, he was reborn in the New 52 as a very good hero, and his series got canceled. A lot of people, including one Jeff Johns, made sure he is in Flash. So both of them are very welcome in my mind. But now to the real fun. Detective Thawne, who is Iris's now boyfriend, is easily one of the most important characters in the cast because, dramatic pause, he is Reverse Flash.
Is that really? Reverse Flash?
Reverse Flash. That is his literal nemesis because Reverse Flash, a.k.a. Thawne, is from the future. And his existence, if you will, is entirely dependent on Barry Allen.
Wait, so is that why Harrison Wells went into that room and saw the...
We're getting to that. Don't spoil it yet.
Okay.
But no, if you think about all the things that Thawne said during the episode, he was really happy to see Barry. Hey, Barry, glad to see you're alive. Because Flash being the Flash down the road creates, Thawne and his power set, and he comes back in time to haunt the Flash just because he can, because he knows that as long as Flash stays alive, he'll get to be the supervillain that he is. Which leads to the death of his mother, the Flash's mother, Nora. That was Thawne.
I feel like that's a spoiler alert, not for this, because I had no idea. Thanks a lot, you jerk.
The moment you looked up Reverse Flash, you would have seen the costume and goes, wait a minute, wasn't it the guy in the lightning storm?
I was not about to do that, though.
You're welcome.
I was actually really curious about that.
Now you know. But yes. So it's very interesting. In fact, they actually played that up in a recent DC arc when it was called Flashpoint. And the whole point was that Barry created a paradox to where his mother and grandmother lived, and so he wasn't the Flash anymore. And Professor Thawne, First Flash, came through the paradox alive and goes, guess what, Barry? I could never kill you before, because if you died, I don't exist. But now I can kill you. And he gets stabbed by Batman. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's a spoiler for you. But
yeah, but that was in the comics. I would never.
Batman, so it's complicated. But
yeah, Batman doesn't kill.
This Batman did. So, that's part that I told you, it was a paradox. So. But yeah, so having Reverse Flash in there is just as important as all the rogues in there are already teasing him as a cop, which I thought was interesting because that's different from how he is in the comics. But I'll go away from
Well,
that.
he's already got his girl, which, if you're trying...
That's gotta kill. That's just twisting the knife, my friend. Come back.
So they've already started it.
Yeah, you came back like 100 years to come back and haunt me. Now you take the girl you know I'm gonna marry. So, like, what are you doing to me, man? So, let's talk Easter eggs. Because obviously we have, Vibe, Killer Frost, Reverse Flash, but there were two, at least in my mind, kind of big Easter eggs that signify where we're going. The first one, very obvious, is Gorilla Grodd. That was the cage, if you recall. When they're in Star Labs, they're walking by and you see a cage that says Grodd on it.
Oh, yeah.
That was Gorilla Grodd is easily just as big as the Rogues, or Reverse Flash is one of the big Flash villains, and Jeff Johns himself said he fought to have that cage with Grodd on it in the pilot because he wanted to show we are gonna do Gorilla freaking Grodd. So that just shows how big of a fanboy Jeff Johns is. So you can't go wrong with that. But yes, he is a gorilla. His name is Grodd, and he can talk. And is
I know him. I know that character. Yes.
Good.
It took me a second to realize it, but yes, I do know him.
He too was in Justice League and actually had a big Flash Lantern arc with Gorilla Grodd and the Ape City. So,
the whole city of sentient apes. When I say saves are sentient, but you know what I mean.
I know it is sentient apes. Actually, but it's beside the point. It was like imagine the Planet of the Apes, but like even smarter than that. That's
not as aggressive.
Well, Grodd's aggressive.
The good ones aren't
as
aggressive.
There's always a good gorilla.
So.
But now there's another one, and I'm not sure it was an Easter egg. Maybe it's just because I know my DC history for various reasons. But in the beginning, Iris said, "I'm ready to look at your atom smasher." But obviously referring to the particle collider, which eventually gave him his powers. But in DC continuity, the Atom Smasher is a superhero who is associated with the Justice Society of America, which is basically the forefront to the Justice League. So, I don't know if that was intentional or unintentional.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably reading too much into that one.
I don't know. Just you don't know. Justice Society is a huge part of the DC continuity in any universe, and so I don't know.
Unless that's like their way of hinting at future, because they've already got Arrow, and then they've got Flash, and they're bringing on crap.
Constantine.
Yeah, that's right.
And then Gotham, obviously. So
yeah, and with Gordon and all that. So yeah, so maybe they're trying to do what Marvel did, except with TV shows. Yeah,
I would love that. I really would. And especially since it's been confirmed by Jeff Johns that the movies, the eventual movies, and the TV shows will not interconnect. So this Barry Allen and this era will not be in the Justice League. So,
well, the Justice League movie.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, they will not be in the Justice League movie when, not if, it comes out. So we all know it's going to happen. Okay, we know it's going to happen. So there is that. But like just on a side note, like on the Shazam TV series, I keep wanting to try to get to make the Justice Society is a huge part of one of my storylines. Not saying I have 32 scripts written for it, DC. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying I have concept art. I'm not saying that at all. Just putting it out there. Moving on. Speaking of interconnected DC universes, one of the big joys, at least for me, was Barry quite literally running to Starling City to see one Oliver Queen / Arrow and getting his advice. What did you think about that?
I thought it was good. I mean, it definitely worked because it was, episode 1. Mm-hmm. Although I was, again, just me being me, was very iffy about Arrow's Batman-like exit. So
to be fair, he's done it in multiple episodes. So
not like that. Not like that. He hasn't just run off the edge and shot and swung from it like that.
I think that's the first time you ever seen him like truly jump off the building. But there was a time with Laurel, like she turns around, he's gone, and all you see is him swinging away off an arrow. So that has happened, but that was cool. For me, that was a really cool scene because it shows, once again, hey, we really are connected. We're all there. There was a couple interesting notes, especially as I watched it the second time. First off, he kind of went a little cheesy with the whole, I think the lightning bolt chose you, Barry.
Of course, yeah.
I was like, in some heroes that'll work, but with him, I don't know why. It's not that I don't know why he would say that. It's just I don't know why his character would say that, because he's not a big believer in fate. He's a believer in justice. He's a believer in truth, and he's a believer in you. No, seriously.
No, I know. I'm just having images of like Arrow shooting someone and be like, "This arrow chose you."
Yeah, you wrote the city. That's why this arrow chose you. Look, I wrote your name on it. No. But I mean, it's like he's not that guy. Superman, he is that guy. Or Wonder Woman, she is that kind of person that would say, "Hey, you were chosen for this." But Arrow, he wasn't. His destiny wasn't chosen for him. It was made by Malcolm Merlyn blew up the boat and blah blah blah, and he chose to survive. He wasn't designed to be on the island. He was stranded there, and he chose to survive. So it kind of makes me wonder, especially since he didn't see how he got struck by the lightning bolt. You kind of have to wonder. So the other thing is going off of one of the things you said earlier was continuity. He said at the end, when they were talking about, Barry said, "I can't be a vigilante," and he goes, "Well, you don't have to be. You can be a hero. You can inspire the people in the way I can't." And yet, at the end of season 2, and now as we're going to see in season 3, he is a hero now. He's no longer the vigilante, and they have commented on that numerous times, in that he has inspired people. Now, at the end of season 1, you could say, "Oh yeah, he's not a hero; he's a vigilante."
Oh yeah, no.
Everything. But the end of season 2 with the Mirakuru scare and how he assembled everybody, arrows assembled to fight Slade. He is a hero now, and he is inspiring people, to be better, whatever. But that's just. And since we know that this took place 9 months after Barry's accident, that more or less they're within between 2 and 3 right now in season 1. So that's a little continuity issue in my mind. But other than that, oh, and by the way, cool. Yeah.
that was kind of cheesy.
I did like that though, because even though Arrow has seen like the Mirakuru soldiers, he's never really seen like superpowers, and then he hangs on the building and sees Barry fly off, and he goes, "Cool." Wow, he really wasn't lying.
I know, right?
So, yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the last thing, because that last 30 seconds of the pilot were easily the most intriguing of the whole pilot in my mind.
Oh, wait. One last thing.
Okay, go ahead.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
Something, again, just me being me, that bothering me was with the cop. After he discovers, hey, this guy can control weather. I saw the guy you thought he was dead. It was after when they show up, and Detective West was like, everything you saw as a kid, that was just made up in your head, and this, and you know what I'm talking about, that scene when they're screaming in the street, and Barry Allen was like, "No, you don't understand. I saw him. He controlled weather." Right there, you should have said, "Look at how fast I can run."
I'm going to bash that right now, because the number one rule of a superpowered superhero is you don't show your powers unless you absolutely have to, because
that's a moment you have to, though.
You are surrounded by people. Iris is watching you, even if she's going like, head swivel. You are surrounded by people. Take him
out. I don't know. I just move your hand. Just move your hand. He can move his hand. I feel like there was something else he could have done other than just stormed off and be like, rah, 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 rah.
Grumble. No, I could see that to a degree, but you have to see it from his point. He's like, even if he had shown him, what would that have changed? Just because he can run really fast, what does that mean that Clyde Martin is still alive? That doesn't prove that to a degree. Now, yes, after...
it might go, hey, maybe he's not crazy. So.
Yeah, you might have it on that. It's a story thing, because it worked out in the end when, he did see Clyde, and, they did go Weather Wizard on him, and then Barry came in and, did the whole reverse F5, which I thought was awesome, and everything.
Which I don't think that would actually work scientifically.
I honestly think it do, if you really think about it, because in weather, and I used to study weather, I really did, the way to counteract storm cells is to have a counteractive one. So
well, it's air pressure. It's all air pressure.
Exactly, it's air pressure, and if you have one thing going one way and one thing going another, and they hit, they will literally cancel each other out. I actually did study that for a while. When I didn't want
I'll take your word for it, but
I'm
still iffy on it.
I wanted to be a Major League Soccer star when I was a kid. I wanted to be a weatherman. They were that cool. Who else gets to predict the weather? Not you. It's like, yeah. So, all right. So, shall we talk about Harrison Wells?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, the Harrison Wells is the head of Star Labs, and he was the head of the Particle Accelerator Project. And when we meet him, he is paralyzed. He is very angry. He has had all his glory and fame stripped from him, and he sees Barry as the Flash, not as the Flash, but as the result that his work did do something good or whatever. And he was a jerk. Then he was a good guy, inspiring him and everything. And then at the end, we see him alone. He enters a secret wall. He stands up, goes to a hologram of all things, activates it, and we see, if you're still here after 50 some odd minutes, you don't want another spoiler, you better turn this off right now. He sees a holographic newspaper from roughly 10 years from now. I'm marking this from where we are, literally on this earth, 10 years from now. And it says, Flash missing, disappeared in crisis. I'll get to that word in a minute. And
would you call it an infinite crisis?
Or a final crisis?
Oh, God.
Or maybe an identity crisis?
I was more or less playing off the, video game that they're all in.
But, that's right. But all three of those that we mentioned were huge major DC arcs or comic stories. That's why okay. Yeah, Infinite Crisis was one. There was Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis, Identity Crisis, Crisis on Two Earths, etc., etc. Crisis is literally the word to use when you want to describe a worldwide catastrophe and something bad is going to happen and the world will never be the same. You say it's a crisis. Moving on. So something 10 years from now, roughly, is going to happen to Flash, which means, A, this guy's from the future, just like Thawne. So why is he back? And 2, what does this mean going forward? Because if he knew that the particle accelerator was going to explode, did he tamper with it? Did he know what was going to happen and just made sure the events occurred in the right order so that Barry could get his powers? How much does he know? Because if we do have a farseer, for lack of a better word, knowing certain events that's going to happen, it's going to change things. And this is something that Arrow most definitely does not have. So right. It's going to be interesting. And another cute thing, if you pause the image on the newspaper, you will see a couple different things. Number 1, you will see a sub-articles in the bottom left hand of the paper. It says Wayne Queen merger finalized or complete. What does that mean?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Bottom left-hand corner. You can go to it right now if you wanted to. It says that. And so what does that mean? It means that Bruce Wayne, most likely Batman, is in this universe, but they'll never be able to use him. They put him in there to do it. Now,
hey, maybe that's the Batman Beyond crossover we've all been hoping for.
Played by Blane Humphries. Terry! Hey, no joke, on the Batman Beyond comic I've been reading, Terry was blonde. Okay? An alternate timeline version of him was blonde and Blade.
They're getting ready for it, I'm telling you.
I'm gonna be Shazam. I'm working on a cosplay right now. It's gonna be good. So you're Batman Beyond, I'm Shazam, we can work together. Anyway. And then if you look on the bottom right side of the paper, it says red skies vanish or something like that. And you're like, okay, red skies. In Infinite Crisis, there is a...
Is it really Infinite Crisis?
It is Infinite Crisis.
Okay.
I wasn't joking. The game or whatever, in / comic book that's being portrayed because of the MOBA, it was based off the comic.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so in Infinite Crisis and other crises, never mind. Crisis. There is a villain called the Anti-Monitor. He's literally one of the most powerful villains in the DCU, and he arrives on our Earth via a red crack in the sky. It was, in fact, this red crack in the sky was seen in a recent comic arc called Forever Evil, and so the red skies could mean that a crossover of some kind happened to make the Flash disappear. We don't know. Obviously, this is nerd going at it, saying this could be what happened. Yeah. Crisis literally means two things: a world is never going to be the same, and two worlds plus are crossing over. This is a parallel universe coming to our world, and the Animator is from a parallel universe. So it's interesting. And the Flash, just to spin off here, is known for going into parallel universes because of his connection to his powers, which is known as the Speed Force. So alternate worlds, alternate universes, all are open in this. And this paper could be the sign that said time travel not only is going to happen, it's going to happen soon because he got here somehow, Thawne got here somehow.
Yeah.
And it's good.
This brings me to my next thing with continuity that I wonder how they're going to deal with.
Do it.
So, Arrow, okay. If all this is happening in Flash and they're in the same universe, it has to affect the Arrow universe, the Arrow show world, whatever you want to call it, okay. The Arrow continuity. It has to. You can't. I mean, you just can't have it not. Like if you have this thing, time traveling, and people with all these powers and things happening, and I don't know. I feel like it would just make sense.
You have to. Trust me, that is a question that a lot of people ask. You'd be surprised how many people ask that. It's the simple rule that shows, comics, movies, TV shows, everywhere, they're self-contained unless necessary.
I know.
Think of it like this. Let's just say, let's go to the Dark Knight trilogy, okay? Bane has Gotham on lockdown. If Superman was in this universe, he would fly in and just kick Bane's butt. And
yeah, but those are two separate.
I know. Universes. I'm just saying, giving a hypothetical situation. I don't want to go into a comic thing and you not understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, or So
there is another group of TV shows that did something similar to this.
Go on.
And that was Buffy and Angel.
That's true. That's true. And it happened.
And they did cross over
once.
Well, what do you mean it happened? Like this similar situation, or when they affected each other? Because they affected each other a bunch, and like the whole series finale of Buffy was based off of events that happened in Angel.
Okay, you're right, and I see where you're going with this now. But yeah. I have no doubt. I have no doubt that as we're already seeing and things we are hearing, Arrow and Flash are going to. Maybe not constantly, but they are going to affect each other. Barry is going to show up in Arrow in episode 3 years, and there's going to be a Flash crossover, and Felicity's coming to Arrow, and we know now that if nothing else, Ollie is going to start believing in superpowers because he knows Barry Allen.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so how much is this going to affect it? I honestly don't know.
And that organization, Argus
is.
They didn't even mention that, but I feel like that would have been a very big thing.
Well, think about it like this. This was in the pilot at best. There's 2 days?
I know. I'm reading too much into it.
I don't want you reading too much into it, but Argus probably will be a big factor, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some crossover with that. But the two things is how much is it going to affect it is I don't know, because as Ollie nicely mentioned in the pilot, Starling City and Central City, which is where Flash is located, is 600 miles away.
Yeah.
So, is it going to be on the news? Yes, I would think it would be a very funny thing. Every episode, they're watching the news and it's like, oh, news from Starling City. Oh, news from Central City. And you get smirk from the characters and yeah, we're connected. But again, how much is it going to connect? I honestly don't know because it's a story thing. B, you don't want to keep nudging the people saying, hey, this is happening. Could it be a constant thing? Sure. Should it be a constant thing? I don't know. it really, I trust the writers. You know, if Arrow proved anything, is that they can do it. They can have a good story. They can have good potential, and this is kind of uncharted territory, at least in the DC world. Where, like, they have two heroes in the same universe on the same network and everything. So it will be an interesting thing.
And it's not like they can go ask Joss Whedon for help because he's with Marvel.
Even then, you know, if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. we're not going to go Marvel, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to say this one thing. If Marvel proved one thing, it's that you have to be careful with how much, you know, you hold on to those universes because it can save you, but it can also cripple you. You know, podcast for another time. So, okay, let's wrap it up with this. Flash is coming out in October. What are you most excited to see?
All of it. I don't know. I don't know. I like it when things cross over, so I am excited to see all the different ways they can do it.
Okay.
It's a little geekdom thing of mine. I like crossovers.
Okay, that's fine. I personally, with Arrow, you kind of knew what to expect because it was that grounded reality. You know, you had the list, you had the bad guys, you had occasional DC characters like Ted Gaynor and Huntress and everything, but you more or less knew what to expect. With the Flash, you don't have that luxury. Yes, you know the Rogues are going to be there because it's the Flash. We now know Grodd is going to be there, Thawne is going to be there. But you don't know what's capacity. The first season is going to be very interesting for me because it's going to be seeing who these characters are, how far are they going to evolve, and what other characters are going to come in. Because if Arrow was really good at something, it was bringing in characters that you didn't expect to see and put them in a new way for better or for worse. You know, Huntress, that was bad, but Deathstroke was awesome. It was horrible.
The Royal Flush Gang.
For the record, the Royal Flush. I'm not going to get into this, but it's more complicated than you think. I'm surprised you knew who the Royal Flush Gang is. Honestly.
I love the Royal Flush Gang. Batman Beyond.
Yes,
I'm not going to lie.
Yes, of course.
That is like the one thing I know almost everything about. So
okay, that's complicated though. You know, you had of course Black Canary. You had the League of Assassins. You know, you weren't expecting to see that. You know, and now we're going to get Katana and obviously Argus. So, you know, it's complicated. But with Flash, you know, even though we've got confirmations of a couple of the Rogues, we got Firestorm, who's going to be appearing in a capacity. You know, there's rumors about Metamorpho. I don't know who to expect because, you know, as they said, as Barry nudged at us to Easter egg kind of, there's a lot of things have happened in the last 9 months that Barry was in a coma. So who all got their powers? Who's gonna get their powers? It's gonna be a fun ride. So I hope fans give it a shot. Like I said, I loved it. You said you loved it, Blane. So,
and I'm not even a super huge Flash.
Yeah, neither am I. Again, I was dead worried about this because I was like, oh man, I don't know how they're gonna pull it off, and they did. I am pleasantly surprised, and I love that when that happens. So
I just hope it doesn't get too, I guess, obnoxious with all of the superpowers and everything.
That's the other thing. Is like, how much containment will you have? And which leads to a very quick point of special effects. You know, they're on a budget. You know, there was only one point in the entire pilot.
Yes, and that pilot was probably the most well-produced pilot I've ever seen.
Yeah, there was, effects-wise, there was only one point where I literally was like, I can't believe you did that, effects-wise. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. It's when they're at Ferris Airfield, which is a DCU nod in itself, when he's doing the run and he stops and goes, woohoo. You know that's not his body. That's like a ragdoll image of him. It's like, you know, his head is huge, his body's all stringed out, and he's like, woohoo! And like,
yeah, but the rest of it, like that whole thing with the tornado and we caught the thing flying at the detective, like that was super well produced.
Yeah, it was. I like the running effects were great. The tornado was believable. The fog, all the weather stuff was good. So that puts my mind at ease because, you know, effects can be tricky when it comes to superheroes. So that's the other point is, how much are they going to be allowed to spend? How much are we going to see effects-wise? It's I don't know. So, but the worst thing they could do, at least in the first season is just become so obsessed with the powers that they lose things in the process. And I hope they don't do that, because this has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Well, that was an hour long. I love it. Folks, if you take nothing less from this, you just got two guys talking about a pilot for an hour because it was that good.
It was a 45-minute long pilot.
Yeah, it was like 45 minutes, which is not bad for a pilot. So,
But no, it was a 45-minute long pilot. We talked about it for an hour.
Yeah. We should have just dissected it minute by minute. No.
Well, we did talk about Arrow and other things. So
we talked about Arrow and Marvel for a very brief second, but yeah. All right. Well, I would like to thank you, Blane Humphries, for joining me on this very special podcast. I hope we will get to talk about this and potentially Arrow as October draws near, because we are almost more or less a little over 2 months away from the premieres of both Arrow Season 3 and Flash Season 1. So it's very exciting time to be a DCU fan. So for Blane Humphries at 2-dash.com, I am Todd Black. You have been following the nerd, and hey, if you want to hear more of us, don't worry, we'll be back in a flash.